Everyone thinks that once you retired, you got it all figured out, but we don't. So I started this series called Freedom in Progress to share behind the scene of our finances, what's working, what's not, and what we've been learning and applying, figuring out this whole retirement planning. Hopefully, by seeing where we are at each step of our finance post-retirement, you would feel more ready to pull the trigger. We just wrapped up Q1 2026, and there are a few things I want to share. First, about healthcare. If you're new here, hi, I'm Angie. My husband Tyler and I, we strolled to financial freedom in 6 years while traveling half of the year. And then I got laid up. We decided to retire on the same day. Retirement was decided for us, and that's the reason why we were not ready when we pulled the trigger. But we did it anyway and trusting that we're gonna figure things out later. And now we're sharing with you the behind the scene of how we're figuring things out. First, about healthcare, our COBRA ended at the end of February. So starting in March, we have been paying for our own health insurance. We're gonna share the updates on that. The next thing is our decision if we want to do Roth conversion this year or not. Then our projected withdrawal rate for this year so far. And I'm reading the book called 5 Types of Wealth. Recently took a quiz on my 5 types of wealth, and the results a little bit surprised. The last thing, which is the most important thing, now that we are retired, I want to get more serious about our retirement planning. So I checked out one of the popular tools out there, which is Projection Lab, to really stress test our portfolio with different scenarios. And as we were doing that, something hit us. There were a few things about retirement that are way more important than the success rate. If you ever use FIRE calculator, especially the ones with Monte Carlo simulation, you will see the results in percentage. That's your rate of success. Of course, the higher it is, the more chance that your portfolio is gonna last you for the rest of your life. That's a really good baseline that gives you a sense of reassurance of where you are with your finance, but it doesn't really guarantee your chance of success. And I'm gonna share more why. The first thing about healthcare costs, Tyler was in charge of this. I'm gonna let him share with you. Can you share about the updates on the healthcare?
Yeah, so we're lucky enough to be in a state that has an Affordable Care Act marketplace for health insurance. And there's about 14 states in the US that have that. So hopefully you're in one as well. There's a whole range of plans you can get, and it is income-based, so there's a range in how much you'll be charged. We ended up going with the highest deductible, cheapest plan, and immediately upon getting it, I broke my collarbone in the ocean, but that's how it goes sometimes. The sign-up was really simple on the platform. You sort of have an estimate for your income. You can put it in, and then if it changes, you can always update it, and it'll update your premiums accordingly.
I think you can go now. And the next thing is, should we do Roth conversion? So Roth conversion here is the Roth conversion ladder strategy. You can look it up to learn more about it. So pretty much like a 5-year ladder. You start to convert in the first year, and then you do that every single year. And on the 5th year, you can withdraw the principal without penalty. So that's pretty much the gist of it. And should we do Roth conversion or not is not really an investment question. It's actually a tax question. So we have to look at our tax situation of this year to see if it makes sense for us to do the conversion. When you do a conversion, you pay tax on the entire amount. So you have to use your cash or sell stocks in your brokerage account to cover it, but that whole amount is gonna be counted as your income, right? And this year, we actually have some extra income from my tender offer. What is tender offer? Tender offer is when a private company wants to buy back shares from their shareholders. So I am not an employee anymore, but I still hold shares. So I'm selling those back to my previous company. So we're gonna have some extra income. Combine the two of them, it would push us into a pretty high tax bracket, probably around 22%. So because of that, it doesn't make sense for us to do Roth conversion this year. All right, moving on to projected withdrawal rate. Our rate is gonna be less than 1% this year. The general guideline, not rule, just guideline is 4%. But because this is our very first year in retirement, and to avoid the sequence of return risk, we try to keep the withdrawal rate as low as possible. What is sequence of return risk? Tyler did like a whole video on it. Very informative. You should check it out. When it comes to planning for retirement, sequence of return rate is the most important thing you should pay attention to and plan your finances around it. And because the rate's gonna be less than 1%, I call it such a wonderful rate that we get to have in our first year of retirement. All right, next is 5 Types of Wealth. If you never heard of the book, it's a really nice book to read. The author's point of view is financial wealth is the least important wealth of all the 5 types. Yes, money can enable your happiness, but doesn't buy it. You have to invest in other areas in your life to have a fulfilling life. Anyway, there's a quiz on scoring my 5 types, and I did it, and this is the result. So as you can see here, I'm pretty low on time and physical wealth. It's pretty funny. People think that now that we retired, we would have more time. In theory, yeah, but the fact that I'm scoring so low on these 2 areas is a very strong indicator that I'm still in the transition phase into retirement. I'm still working on getting used to the new routines, the new schedule of retirement life. And also my physical wealth, it all comes down to I don't have a good sleep schedule. Back in the day when I had a job, I have more of a structure. Now I go to bed knowing that I don't have to wake up at a certain time. So it's harder for me to maintain it now. It's very interesting to see the score and realize that, yeah, I'm still very much in the transition phase. And then retirement scenarios using projection lab. Let me show you what I'm talking about. So this is the chance of success. If I hit it, you see that we have almost 95% chance. But when I look into the data, as you see here, that it used historical data to run the success rate. Imagine what happened if I retire in 1928, 29, 30. You know what these years are, right? It is the Great Depression. And then the next thing is these years right here, and this is the last decade of the 2000s. So for 10 years, it's effectively no return on investment. So what does this data really tell us? It is that success rate is really nice to know, but when you retire is much more important. If you retire in a really bad market condition, you just have a lower success rate. That's why sequence of return risk is so important. We need to be aware of it and really plan for it so that your portfolio is gonna last you for as long as you want it to. And the second thing is flexibility of your spending is more important. So let's say for sequence of return risk, the first 5 to 10 years is the most important years to protect your portfolio, right? If those years happen to be in a very bad market condition, we have to cut down on our spendings in order to not withdraw so much from our portfolio. But if the expenses that I put into the formula means that we have to spend every single penny to live comfortably, that means that we cannot reduce our spending any more than that. So the way that I set up our expenses now, it gives us about 30% of room to breathe, meaning that if it's really bad, we can easily cut down 30% of our expenses. We can live really comfortably, we just cannot travel. But at the end of the day, we have that comfort of knowing that we have a lot of breathing room in our spending rate. Another thing I learned from running scenarios on projection labs is that for the Roth conversion strategy, it's actually not straightforward because, as I said earlier, whenever you do a conversion, you have to pay tax, right? And there's have to be a balance between doing the Roth conversion and protecting the funds in your taxable account. So doing 100% Roth conversion is not necessarily the best strategy. Even for us, we had to run multiple scenarios with 100%, with 50% conversion to know how we should approach this strategy. So this Roth conversion insight is the most surprise to me. I always thought that it's just so straightforward. We should do the conversion every year and that's pretty much it. But it's a lot more complicated. So anyways, that wraps up our financial state in Q1 2026. I hope it's helpful. If you have any questions, advice, suggestions, please comment below. If you find this video helpful, please like and subscribe. And we're gonna share more of our mess behind the scene. And we would love to invite you to join our stroll to freedom and we can help each other get there faster. I hope it's helpful. Bye now.